Following her delivery, my father, a man of considerable means, intended to surprise me, arriving at the hospital unannounced. However, upon witnessing the simple attire and baby provisions I had prepared, he directly inquired, "Daughter, was the $7,500 I remitted to you each month insufficient?" I was utterly taken aback. I was unsure if he was jesting. I responded, "Father, I manage with my savings and my freelance endeavors." My answer clearly stunned him. His complexion flushed, and at that precise moment, my husband and mother-in-law entered the chamber. I could never have fathomed what was about to transpire. The antiseptic aroma and the stale atmosphere were the initial sensations that registered as Zola regained consciousness. She opened her eyes languidly. The room felt alien, yet simultaneously offered a sense of repose. The discomfort that permeated her body, particularly in her lower abdomen, remained acute. Nevertheless, that suffering was instantaneously supplanted by an overwhelming tranquility as she turned her head to the side. Within a basic, transparent plastic crib held a tiny being, still ruddy and creased, her son. Tears of profound emotion began to flow anew. She tenderly brushed his minuscule cheek with the pad of her index finger. She felt that all the agony endured through hours of labor had been repaid manifold. Zola straightened the slightly askew shawl draped across her shoulders. She had opted for a shared 3-person ward at this county general hospital, not due to a dearth of alternatives, but because it represented the most pragmatic choice, given her and her husband's financial standing. The room contained 4 beds, though at that juncture, only hers and another in a corner were occupied. A ceiling fan rotated slowly, emitting a monotonous squeak, yet it sufficed to alleviate the heat. She gazed at her infant once more. A pale blue woolen blanket, procured from a second-hand shop some months prior, enfolded his diminutive form. Zola smiled. She recalled how her mother-in-law, Imani, had scoffed when she had shown it to her. "Zola, why do you acquire these inexpensive baubles? They will irritate the infant's skin. You are excessively parsimonious. How can you be so threadbare with your own child?" Zola's heart sank. Threadbare. She was merely endeavoring to be pragmatic. Her husband, Kwame, was merely an office clerk at a private enterprise. His remuneration barely covered the quotidian expenditures in a major metropolis. To finance the delivery and procure the infant's necessities, Zola had labored incessantly. From her 6th month of gestation, she had commenced accepting commissions as a freelance graphic designer. She would toil late into the night, often until her back ached and her eyes burned. She economized every cent. She suppressed yearnings for costly take-out meals. She restrained her envy when her companions displayed designer handbags or new apparel, all for the sake of her son. She aspired to demonstrate to herself and to Imani that she could be a devoted mother without being a burden to her husband, Kwame. Zola sighed. Her husband was a good man, but excessively pliant to his mother. Whenever Zola voiced grievances concerning Imani's demeanor, Kwame would simply respond, "Exercise patience, my dear. Mother is simply that way. She is an elder. You must comprehend her." He never stood up for her, and when financial matters arose, he invariably surrendered his paycheck to Imani for management. Zola was allotted only a modest sum for daily expenses, which frequently proved insufficient. "I shall need to undertake additional work, Kwame," she informed him one day. He merely nodded. "Indeed, if you are capable, proceed, but do not disregard your marital duties." Zola abruptly emerged from her reverie as the room door creaked open. A nurse entered with a benevolent smile. "You are awake, Mrs. Zola. How are you feeling? Can you sit up?" she inquired while examining the intravenous drip. "I am well, thank you, still a trifle sore, but exceptionally joyful," Zola replied in a hoarse voice. The infant is remarkably healthy and exquisite, 7 pounds and 19 inches. Perfect! The nurse lauded her. You have demonstrated fortitude, Mrs. Zola. You attended all your examinations and meticulously prepared everything yourself. Your husband informed me that you even managed all the documentation. You are remarkably self-reliant. Zola merely offered a faint smile. She had been compelled to be. Just as she was about to inquire when her husband would return, the door opened once more. This time it was neither a nurse nor was it Kwame or Imani. Zola's heart hammered. A tall, well-formed individual clad in an opulent silk shirt stood in the doorway. His countenance, with its firm, authoritative features, appeared somewhat fatigued, yet his gaze was fixed upon her. "Father," Zola whispered in disbelief. It was Mr. LeVar Thorne, her father. As he entered, the small shared room abruptly felt considerably more oppressive. The fragrance of his costly cologne overpowered the disinfectant. Mr. Thorne was a magnate, the proprietor of a business conglomerate with an intricate network of ventures. Zola was his sole daughter, but she had elected a modest existence by marrying Kwame, a decision that initially encountered her father's vehement opposition. Their relationship had deteriorated. Zola was too proud to solicit, and Mr. Thorne was too occupied to inquire. "Father, how did you ascertain my presence here?" Zola inquired, attempting to sit up. The pain in her abdomen flared anew. "I am still your father, Zola," Mr. Thorne stated in his deep, grave voice. He did not approach Zola's bed, but directed his gaze toward the infant's bassinet. His assistant, who stood behind him, carried a considerable basket of exotic fruits. Mr. Thorne approached the bassinet and contemplated his first grandchild. His stern countenance gradually softened. "It is a boy," he murmured. "Yes, father, he is your grandson," Zola declared with pride. Mr. Thorne extended a finger and touched the small hand peeking out from the blanket, but the smile that had formed on his face gradually vanished. His eyes scanned the room, the chipped iron bed, the squeaking fan, and the pale blue woolen blanket that enveloped his grandson. "You are in a room such as this?" His voice was devoid of emotion. "Yes, father, it is a shared room. As long as it is clean, it suffices," Zola replied, beginning to feel uneasy. "And what is this blanket? Why is it so coarse?" he asked again, this time with greater severity in his tone. I purchased it at the thrift store, father. It is of good quality. I washed it thoroughly." Mr. Thorne fell silent. His face tightened. He stared intently at his daughter. In his eyes resided a contained fury. "Zola," he called her softly yet firmly, "I arrived unannounced to surprise you. I had presumed you would be in a VVIP suite. I believed you would provide our grandson with the utmost." "Father, Mr. Thorne interrupted her by raising a hand. "But what do I behold? The infant's attire is modest, the blanket is inexpensive, and your chamber is this." He drew a deep breath. "Daughter, was the $7,500 I remitted to you each month insufficient?" Zola's world seemed to halt. $7,500 each month? She emitted a small, nervous, forced chuckle. "Father, what are you discussing? Are you jesting? $7,500? "Jesting." Mr. Thorne's voice escalated an octave. "I never jest about finances, and far less when it pertains to my only daughter." Zola's heart raced. She searched her father's gaze for any indication of falsehood, but found only genuine indignation. "Father, you never dispatched that remuneration to me. I defrayed all expenditures and my necessities, with my savings and the income I derived as a freelancer." Silence descended. It appeared even the ceiling fan had ceased its squeaking. Mr. Thorne regarded her with wide eyes. His countenance, previously pallid with exhaustion, was now ruddy with anger, not embarrassment, but a burgeoning wrath. Now he comprehended. Why did his daughter appear so gaunt and weary? Why was his grandson swaddled in an inexpensive blanket? Freelance work, your savings, Mr. Thorne growled. Just then the room door opened once more. Imi's high-pitched laughter was audible even before she entered. "Oh, Kwame, the things you do. You will procure another designer handbag for me later, correct? As long as the hue harmonizes, I am content." Kwame and Amani entered the room. Their laughter ceased abruptly. Their hands were laden with bags from ostentatious emporiums. Imani's eyes, which had been sparkling a moment prior, were now petrified by the sight of Mr. Thorne, who stood like a deity of wrath beside Zola's bed. The resulting silence was deafening. Imani's cheerful laughter, which had been heard from the hallway, still echoed in their ears. A stark contrast to the glacial atmosphere in the room. Imani froze in the doorway, her hands clutching several paper bags, emblazoned with renowned brand logos. Beside her, Kwame, Zola's husband, appeared like a deer caught in headlights. His face was deathly pale, and the bags he carried nearly slipped from his grasp. Zola observed them, then the bags. A crimson leather handbag, undeniably worth several thousands, peeked out from one of the bags Amani held, and then Zola glanced at her infant's modest blanket. Something within her head began to throb painfully. Mr. Thorne remained immobile. He simply fixed them with a gaze so penetrating it seemed capable of flaying them alive. His ire was so palpable it felt like a suffocating heat pervading the confined space. Imani was the first to break the silence. Her instinct to assert control of the situation immediately engaged. She swiftly dropped the bags on the floor outside the room and forced a smile, a grimace. "Well, Mr. Thorne, what a surprise. You are here already. You could have provided us with prior notice. Oh, finally. You have arrived to meet your grandson." She greeted him in the most saccharine voice she could muster, feigning an air of normalcy. Quame also stammered, "Yes, father, forgive us. We have only just arrived. We stepped out for a brief repast." He quickly concealed the bags he was carrying behind his back, a gesture as futile as it was absurd. Mr. Thorne offered no response to their salutations. His gaze did not deviate from Kwame and Amani's faces. "A brief repast, you say?" he derided. "From what I observe, you dined at a luxurious boutique." Amani instantly felt cornered but endeavored to conceal it. "Oh no, that is not the case. We merely stopped by to fulfill an errand for a companion. We were en route to the hospital cafeteria." "So what is transpiring, father? What is occurring?" Zola whispered. She remained bewildered. She understood nothing. She felt faint. "What is all this, father?" Mr. Thorne disregarded Zola, taking a step forward. His imposing stature caused Kwame and Amani to instinctively recoil. "I shall pose the question one more time," Mr. Thorne stated in a low, perilous voice. "Mrs. Amani, where is the $7,500 monthly that I provided for my daughter?" This time Zola did not laugh. Instead, the bewilderment in her eyes gradually morphed into dread. She looked at her husband, seeking an explanation. He swallowed hard. A bead of perspiration the size of a chickpea began to trickle down his temple. He glanced at his mother, imploring assistance. Imani swiftly stepped forward. Her feigned benevolence had transformed into an affected expression of sorrow. She even placed a hand on her chest as if startled. "What funds, Mr. Thorne?" $7,500. "Good heavens, that is a substantial sum," she exclaimed. "We have absolutely no notion of what you are discussing. Conversely, sir, it is we who have endured hardship." "Hardship?" Mr. Thorne repeated. "Yes, sir," Amani exclaimed. Her tone had now become accusatory. "It is simply that Zola is a spendthrift. You are unaware of your daughter's true nature. Since she married my Kwame, you would not believe the amount of money she expends. The funds Kwame bestows upon her are never adequate. She is perpetually demanding articles. She claims they are pregnancy cravings, but amusingly enough, all her cravings are exceedingly costly. Zola felt breathless. Mother-in-law, when have I ever requested anything extravagant from you? She protested. Her voice was weak, but it trembled with indignation. I have not requested anything. Oh, do not feign innocence, Zola, Imani retorted acrimoniously. You requested those peculiar designer maternity garments. You requested sustenance from high-end restaurants. My Kwame was at his wits' end. We have been compelled to economize to satisfy your whims. That was a monumental fabrication. Zola remembered vividly. She possessed only 3 maternity ensembles, all acquired from the thrift store. And as for sustenance, she frequently endured hunger because Imani prepared just enough, citing the need to conserve funds. Mother-in-law, that is a falsehood, Zola exclaimed, her eyes welling with tears. When have I ever squandered funds? Conversely, I contributed to the household expenditures with the earnings from my personal endeavours. All these infant accoutrements were purchased with my own funds. You even characterized me as miserly for acquiring an inexpensive blanket. See, there it is. You labored on your own. Of course you did. I wager you squandered that remuneration on your own indulgences without granting your husband a solitary cent. Imani counterattacked, sensing a degree of superiority as she observed Zola weeping. Observe, Mr. Thorne, you address her politely and she commences weeping. What a crybaby! Quame, observe your wife. Quame merely kept his head bowed, not daring to look at Zola or, naturally, his father-in-law. Zola shook her head vehemently. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Father, it is untrue. Believe me, I implore you. Mr. Thorne observed his weeping daughter on the bed, and then Imani standing arrogantly, her countenance replete with deceit. His fury had reached its zenith. Enough, he growled. His voice was not loud, but it caused the room to reverberate. Imani instantly fell silent. Mr. Thorne directed his attention to Quame. I am not addressing your mother. I am addressing you as my daughter's spouse. Quame slightly raised his head, his lips trembling. Yes, father. For 3 years of marriage, on the first day of each month, I have transferred $7,500 to your bank account. I did so deliberately to your account, not Zola's, because I believed you, as the head of the household, would manage that remuneration for my daughter's felicity. Zola felt as if her heart were being constricted. $7,500 for 3 years every month. She felt dizzy. It was an astronomical sum. I did not inform Zola deliberately, Mr. Thorne continued. I desired my daughter to perceive that her husband was attending to her needs diligently, that she was living comfortably. But what do I observe today? Mr. Thorne gestured toward the infant's blanket. My daughter gives birth in a shared room, and my grandson is swaddled in a cheap rag. Meanwhile, you, he pointed to the shopping bags outside the door, have just returned from indulging yourselves. Father, it is a misunderstanding, Quame stammered. That remuneration we utilized for... Utilized for what? Mr. Thorne pressed. For household expenditures, father. The mortgage, the automobile payment, the residence. Mr. Thorne emitted a sardonic laugh. The dwelling you inhabit is not registered in your mother's name, and the automobile. Since when can a mere office clerk such as yourself afford a luxury vehicle on installments? Imani perceived that the situation was escalating unfavorably. Well, but it is also our remuneration, Mr. Thorne. Quamie's funds are also counted. It is natural for him to utilize it for the family and for his mother as well. So, Mr. Thorne stated, you appropriated the funds that should have been for my daughter and utilized them for your own advantage. Concurrently, my pregnant daughter toiled late into the night. Is that not accurate, father? He is excusing himself. Zola desired to engage in employment. She asserted she was bored at home. Bored? Zola repeated softly. Her heart was shattered. I laboured because the funds you provided were never sufficient. I laboured because your mother would not even grant me funds to purchase vitamins. Tension once again gripped the room. Mr. Thorne regarded his son-in-law with a murderous expression. I require no further pretexts. He withdrew his telephone from the pocket of his expensive suit. Exhibit your bank account statements to me forthwith. Quame froze. This was the denouement. Father, please, not here, the humiliation, he whispered. Humiliation? Mr. Thorne vociferated. After deceiving my daughter for 3 years, you now speak to me of humiliation. Present it to me presently. My telephone lacks adequate reception at the hospital, father, Quamey equivocated, a pathetic fabrication. He could barely maintain his grasp on the telephone. Cease fabricating excuses, or do you wish to flaunt your wealth before us? Mr. Thorne, Amani suddenly vociferated. Do you believe that merely because you possess wealth, you can insult us thus? My Quame also labours. We possess our own finances. We have no need for yours. If you had no need, why did you utilize it? Mr. Thorne counterattacked. Imani was rendered speechless, her face flushed with anger and mortification. Mr. Thorne remained unmoved. He looked at Quamey. I shall count to 3. 1, 2. Quame trembled. He glanced at his mother and then at Zola, who was weeping uncontrollably in bed. He was caught between a precipice and a hard place. Father, please, I do not require to examine his telephone. Mr. Thorne interrupted him frigidly. He dialed a number on his telephone. Hello. Dispatch to me a comprehensive statement of all monthly transfers to the account bearing Quame's name for the past 3 years and a record of all expenditures from that account immediately. Mr. Thorne concluded the call. He regarded Quam and Amani. You take me for a simpleton. I have consistently monitored the flow of those funds. I merely desired to hear you confess it from your own lips, but you elected to fabricate. And Amani collapsed onto the hard chairs of the waiting room. They comprehended that the game was concluded. The silence in the room was dense, heavier than the stale hospital air. The ceiling fan continued its squeaking, and the only sound Zola registered was her own heart pounding against her eardrums. $144,000. That figure spun in her mind like a top. $7,500 a month for 3 years. Zola looked at her father, then at Kwame with his head bowed, and at Imi, pale as the wall. She attempted to process that information, to connect it with her life over the past 3 years. 3 years of struggle, of privation, of perpetually feeling guilty for lacking sufficient resources, for being a burden. Suddenly, fragments of memories surfaced in her mind, now tinged with a new and painful significance. She recalled when she was 4 months pregnant. It was not a luxurious craving. She simply desperately desired some high-quality mangoes, slightly more expensive but perfectly ripe from the grocery store. She mustered the courage and requested them from Kwame. As always, he relayed the message to Amani, and Amani stated, "Why purchase something so costly? There are ample at the market. Do not be so spoiled." The subsequent day, Imani presented mangoes, but they were the ones sold nearly spoiled at a clearance price. "Consume these. Mangoes are mangoes," her mother-in-law informed her. Zola wept covertly in the bathroom as she consumed the acidic, fibrous fruit, attempting to suppress her nausea. Now she understood. On the day she requested $10 mangoes, $4,000 had been deposited into her husband's account. She recalled when she was 7 months pregnant. Her belly was enormous and her back ached terribly. but she compelled herself to continue with her design work to meet deadlines. She sat at the narrow dining table in front of her laptop until 3 in the morning. The infant kicked incessantly as if protesting. He departed the room not to console her but to fetch water. He observed her exhaustion with deep, dark circles beneath her eyes. What did he say? "Do not forget to rise tomorrow morning. Prepare breakfast for mother before I depart for work." Not a suggestion to rest, not an offer of assistance. He permitted his pregnant wife to labor to the point of exhaustion, while there was ample funds in his bank account to engage a dozen assistants. She remembered her visits to the gynecologist. The physician prescribed a high-potency vitamin complex and calcium. The fetus was healthy, but the mother was suffering from malnutrition. "Mrs. Zola, you must ingest this to possess strength for labor," the physician advised her. Zola observed the total price, $60. With the funds Amani allotted her for daily use, she lacked that sum. She returned home and presented it to Kwame. Once again, it was Amani who responded. "Vitamins that costly. Physicians merely aim to dupe individuals. I consumed no vitamins when I was pregnant with Kwame, and observe how healthy he turned out. Ingest the iron pills they provide gratuitously at the community clinic. Do not be feeble." That night, Zola wept. She felt like a failure, like an inadequate mother. Even before her son's birth, she felt incapable of providing him with the utmost. Ultimately, she discreetly contacted a client and requested additional work in exchange for an advance. A week later, she purchased the vitamins with her hard-earned funds and was compelled to deceive Imani, stating a friend had gifted them to her. She grappled with a pang of guilt over spending funds on her own child's well-being, while her husband and his mother reveled in opulent circumstances. Zola's tears fell silently, no longer of sorrow, but of a burning resentment, regret, and the stark realization of her own profound naivety. "Zola, my darling," Wami's voice, quivering, cut through her thoughts. He reached for her hand, but Zola recoiled sharply. "Don't touch me," she spat, her voice low and guttural. A ping. Mr. Thorne's phone vibrated, a notification. 2 emails and messages flooded in. His assistant had been remarkably swift. Mr. Thorne didn't need to power up his laptop. His phone's expansive screen presented all the necessary details. His countenance remained placid, yet his eyes blazed. "Your account statement is quite illuminating," Mr. Thorne remarked. Wami's head dipped lower. "Let's examine it," Mr. Thorne continued, his tone smooth but deadly. "Last month, a deposit from me on the 1st day. On the 4th day, a card transaction at a high-end establishment, $300. Ah, that must have been a magnificent repast." Amani shifted uncomfortably. "On the 7th day," Mr. Thorne proceeded, "a purchase at that exclusive boutique, $2,500. He glanced up from his device, his gaze locking onto Imi. "I presume that's the designer handbag you flaunted at your social functions. The one you claimed Wami acquired through his own arduous labor." Amani flinched. "Sir, have you been observing us?" "There's no need for observation," Mr. Thorne replied with chilling detachment. "I merely safeguard my investments, and my daughter is my most prized possession, one that you two have callously exploited." Mr. Thorne returned his attention to the screen. "And 3 months ago, a deposit of $7,500. The following week, a down payment on a Scarlet sports coupe registered in Wami's name." Zola's eyes widened. "A car? The Scarlet vehicle you insisted was a company car?" she stammered. It was a bonus, Zola, a company bonus." "A bonus, you say?" Mr. Thorne emitted a dry, humorless chuckle. "Your company does not issue bonuses of that magnitude, Wami. I am privy to your exact remuneration and the fiscal performance of your firm. This sum, he tapped the phone screen, belongs to my daughter. It is more than sufficient. Amani suddenly surged to her feet, her composure shattering. She could endure no more. Her face, previously pale, was now flushed crimson with indignation. So what? What consequence does it bear? It's Wami's right. He's my son. It's natural for a son to provide for his mother, to bestow gifts upon her. Providing for his mother with funds pilfered from his wife? Mr. Thorne inquired pointedly. Pilfered from whom? Amani retorted with vehemence. It's her husband's money, his prerogative. Furthermore, you yourself remitted it to Wami's account, did you not? Consequently, it is not Zola's. Had it truly been intended for her, why did you not deposit it into her personal account? Because I trusted, Mr. Thorne's voice deepened into a growl. I trusted that a husband would fulfill his marital obligations. I was mistaken. Yes, you were indeed mistaken, Amani declared, a triumphant glint in her eye. That money was rightfully ours from the outset. If we purchased handbags, vehicles, or undertook renovations, that is our private affair. You have no standing to intervene. Renovations? Zola's mind flashed back. 2 months prior, their residence had undergone a complete overhaul. The kitchen had been expanded, and a new air conditioning unit and a private ensuite bathroom had been installed in Amani's quarters. Zola had been relegated to sleeping in the cramped living area for an entire month. Amani had attributed it to a lottery win. Zola's heart fractured. She turned to her husband. Is what your mother is stating accurate? You believed it was your entitlement? He lacked the fortitude to respond. He could only weep. Yet his tears appeared disingenuous, shed not for Zola but for himself. Suddenly he collapsed to his knees, not before Zola but before Mr. Thorne. He crawled, attempting to clasp his father-in-law's feet. Father, forgive me. I erred. My mother compelled me. Father, I pledge to reform. I will repay the funds. But please do not terminate my employment. Please do not involve the authorities. Zola watched him, utterly aghast. Even in this critical juncture, Wami's paramount concern was averting job loss and incarceration, not the betrayal of his wife's trust, nor remorse for abandoning her and their son. Ping. Mr. Thorne's phone chimed once more, a text message from his assistant. Mr. Thorne read it, his features contorted further. He fixed his gaze on the man kneeling on the floor. Rise, he commanded. Wami remained immobile. I said rise, Mr. Thorne bellowed. Wami jolted upright, startled. Mr. Thorne regarded him intently. My assistant has just forwarded the asset tracking report. You are more astute than I initially assessed. Not only have you squandered the funds, but you have utilized them to acquire assets registered in your name. Amani froze. The scarlet sedan is fully paid off and registered to Wami, and the residence you occupy. Mr. Thorne's gaze shifted to Amani. The mortgage was secured by the bank, and you channeled the funds I provided to settle the renovation loan. You haven't merely stolen, you have engaged in money laundering. Mr. Thorne turned, his attention no longer on his daughter's husband and mother-in-law, but on Zola, who sat silently on the bed, her eyes dry. Zola, he addressed her gently, I shall pose this question one final time. After hearing all that has transpired, after uncovering all these truths, do you wish to continue this union with this man and this marriage? Mr. Thorne's inquiry hung suspended in the air. The shared space grew as silent as a tomb, every gaze fixed upon Zola. Wami regarded her with a pathetic expression, his body slick with perspiration. Imani's gaze was sharp and laced with animosity. Zola looked at her father. This man, who had always seemed aloof and distant, now stood as her unwavering protector. Then her eyes fell upon the infant slumbering peacefully in his bassinet, an innocent life that had nearly been nurtured in an environment steeped in deceit, a child who merited so much more. Zola's gaze slowly drifted to Wami, her husband, the man she had loved, or at least believed she had loved, the man she had defended against her father 3 years prior, the man she had entrusted with the stewardship of her family. Before Zola could articulate a response, Imani could no longer contain herself. Her patience had evaporated. The pretense of the suffering, dutiful mother-in-law had long since been discarded. Enough! Cease this display of pitiful woe, Imani shrieked, gesturing accusatorily at Zola. You believe you can intimidate us? Yes, we utilize the funds. So what? Is it in transgression? It was money my son received from his father-in-law. Naturally, he expended it. He attempted to place a hand on his mother's arm. Mum, desist, please. You cease, Wami, Imani interrupted, her voice sharp. You are a maternal devotee. You cower before your wife and your father-in-law. Listen to me meticulously, Mr. Thorne. Her gaze now met Zola's father's defiantly. I opposed Wami's union with your daughter from the outset. I anticipated that a wealthy young woman would be spoiled, useless, someone who would merely demand to be waited upon. And ultimately, my assessment proved correct. Mr. Thorne raised an eyebrow, allowing the woman to continue. We harbored the expectation that by marrying a magnate's daughter, our lives would become more comfortable, that some of her affluence would transfer to us. But no, Zola lived a charade of independence, donning worn attire, subsisting on meagre fare. I was mortified in the presence of our neighbors, my friends. My daughter-in-law, wedded to the son of a prosperous businessman, and she resembled a mendicant. People would assume we mistreated her when in reality she was simply parsimonious. Mother-in-law, Zola groaned. What? You are miserly. You hoarded funds to the point of depletion. My grandson is born and you procure for him this threadbare blanket. How was I to face the scrutiny of others? Imani's agitation escalated. Thus, when you dispatched those funds to Wami, I instructed my son, this is your recompense, my son. Payment for tolerating this woman. And of course, we utilized it. We reveled in it. We acquired superior possessions so that people would cease to look down upon us, so that I could ostentatiously display at my gatherings that my son was a successful man, even if his wife appeared as though she lived on the streets. Each utterance from Imani's lips was a dagger piercing Zola's heart. Naive, beggar, stingy, spoiled, homeless. And you, Zola, Imani pointed at her once more. You are foolish with the benevolent husband you possess, an obedient man. Why did you persist in toiling so assiduously? What were you intending to achieve with all that capital? $7,500 per month. A woman of your disposition would have squandered it entirely on cosmetics and attire. It is far preferable that I possessed it. I acquired gold. I invested in opulent handbags. Those are investments. Their value appreciates perpetually. Far superior to letting the funds dissipate in your custody. The vitriolic monologue finally concluded. Imani gasped, her chest heaving. She appeared sated as if she had expelled all her venom. A brief interlude of silence. Zola's tears had long since dried. Her complexion was ashen, but her eyes no longer betrayed sorrow. Only a void that gradually transmuted into a frigid, incandescent flame. She disregarded Imani. She did not even deign to look at her. Her entire focus was directed towards Wami, her husband, who stood trembling between her and his mother. Zola addressed him. Her voice was remarkably tranquil, almost devoid of emotion. Wami flinched. He had not anticipated Zola summoning him with such composure. Yes, my love. I shall pose but a single query, Zola stated. I shall not inquire about the vehicle or the residence. Just one matter. Kwame swallowed. What? Zola. Her voice was low but distinct. When I was 7 months pregnant and the physician diagnosed me with malnutrition, I implored you to procure a prenatal nutritional supplement that cost $20. Your mother declared there were insufficient funds. He began to tremble. I ask you that day, you knew your mother was fabricating the truth, did you not? He cast his gaze to the floor, unable to meet his wife's eyes. He recollected that day vividly. After Zola had departed the room, his mother had scoffed, "Prenatal supplement? What utter nonsense! Condensed milk suffices," she had declared, and he, Wami, had remained silent. "Answer me, Wami," Zola insisted. He nodded infinitesimally, almost imperceptibly. "Yes," he whispered. "One more thing," Zola continued. "When I labored until 3 in the morning before my laptop, my back aching profoundly and the infant kicking ceaselessly, you witnessed me, did you not?" Wami attempted to evade. "You witnessed me," Zola interrupted, reiterating her question, "and you were aware of the hundreds of thousands of dollars in your account that my father had remitted for me." "That is not a question, it is a statement." Kwame could no longer evade the truth. He understood Zola sought not an answer but confirmation. He bowed his head deeply. This time his nod was more pronounced. Zola's world imploded, yet from the debris she stood resolutely. She possessed all the answers she required: 3 years of forbearance, 3 years of sacrifice, 3 years of devotion. It had all been in vain. She inhaled deeply. The discomfort from the surgical sutures paled in comparison to the agony in her heart. Zola raised her head. She no longer regarded Wami. Her gaze met her father's directly. "Father," her voice was now firm and resonant, "I have my answer. Remove me and my son from this place immediately." Imani was stunned. "What? You're departing? I am initiating divorce proceedings," Zola declared. "What?" Wami exclaimed, finally displaying an emotion other than abject fear. "Zola, no, please. This is a profound misunderstanding. I can provide an explanation. It is entirely my mother's culpability. I adore you, Zola. For our son." "Our son?" Zola emitted a mocking, chilling laugh. "The son you swaddled in a blanket, you deemed inferior, the son to whom you denied vital nutrients, the son whose mother you allowed to exhaust herself while you luxuriated in opulence. Never again utter my son's name." "How utterly insolent you are, Zola," Amani bellowed. "Your father showed you a modicum of compassion, and now you have become conceited. Divorce him if you wish. Do you imagine you can subsist without Wami? Who will desire a divorced woman with a child? You will return to us, groveling for financial assistance." Zola offered only a faint smile. "Mrs. Amani," Mr. Thorne's voice was so frigid it could extinguish fire, "you have selected the incorrect adversary." Mr. Thorne wasted no time. He dialed a number on his phone. "Hello, assemble my Premier legal team without delay," he instructed, his gaze fixed upon Wami, and with full authority. "Arrange the immediate transfer of my daughter and my grandson to the penthouse. File for divorce on behalf of Zola Thorne. Seek complete custodial rights." And Mr. Thorne's lips curled into a subtle smile that did not reach his eyes. "Demand recompense for material and moral damages. Claim the $144,000 plus accrued interest. Seize all assets registered under Wami's and Amani's names that were procured with those funds. I wish for them to be left utterly destitute by the close of day." The shared room seemed to contract. The air, previously stale, now felt oppressive, saturated with toxicity. The directives Mr. Thorne issued over the phone were concise, unambiguous, and unyielding. The resonance of his pronouncements still echoed in Wami's and Amani's ears. "What?" Amani was the first to regain her voice, though it emerged as a strained croak. Seize assets. The police. Mr. Thorne, you cannot possibly be serious. This is an internal family matter. Wami, for his part, appeared as though his very soul had been lacerated. His knees buckled. Father, father, do not do this. He whimpered, attempting once more to appeal to his compassion. I will work, father. I will repay it. I will divorce her. I mean, please, do not confine me to prison, father. Please. Mr. Thorne offered no response. He slipped his phone into his suit pocket. His gaze remained fixed on Zola. Are you prepared, my dear? He inquired softly, as if the two panicked individuals before them were mere phantoms. Zola nodded, her hands, which had been clutching the blanket, slowly relaxed. She had made her resolution. All doubt had dissipated. I am ready, father. No, you are not departing. Wami suddenly roared. He lunged forward, attempting to grab Zola's bed. Zola, listen to me. It is entirely my mother's transgression. She corrupted my thinking. I love you, Zola, for our son. Before Wami's hand could reach the edge of the bed, his momentum was intercepted by Mr. Thorne's personal security detail, a burly man in a dark suit who had remained a silent sentinel by the door. The individual moved with swift, practiced efficiency, halting Wami with a hand on his chest, his expression unreadable. Excuse me, sir. Kindly maintain a respectful distance. Release me. That woman is my wife, Wami shrieked. She is no longer your wife, Mr. Thorne declared. He then pressed the nurse call button adjacent to Zola's bed. I will not permit my daughter to remain in this desolate environment you have orchestrated for even a single additional second. The door swung open. Not only did a nurse enter, but also two hospital security personnel and the supervisor, who had evidently been pre-alerted by Mr. Thorne's assistant. What is occurring, Mr. Thorne? Why all this commotion within the room? The supervisor inquired, his brow furrowed with concern. I am the patient, Zola Thorne's father, Mr. Thorne stated calmly. His presence commanded an immediate deference. I am facilitating my daughter's relocation at this very moment, and I request that you escort these two individuals. He gestured towards Wami and Amani. From this chamber, they are disrupting the patient's tranquility. What? Eject us? Wami protested. This woman is my spouse, and this infant is my son. We are his in-laws and his co-maternal in-laws, Amani added. The supervisor appeared bewildered. Pardon me, Mr. Thorne, but according to protocol, who completed my daughter's admission documentation? Mr. Thorne interrupted. Mrs. Zola herself, sir. Personally, a nurse replied after consulting the records. Excellent, Mr. Thorne declared. I am assuming responsibility henceforth. Transfer my daughter and my grandson to the most exclusive VVIP suite within this medical facility. All expenditures will be borne by my account, and furthermore, prohibit these two individuals, he pointed to Wami and Amani once more, from approaching my daughter within a radius of 100 yards. VIP. Amani's eyes widened. Your wife is escaping. Do something, you pathetic excuse for a man. But Wami was powerless to act. Two security guards were already flanking him. At that precise moment, 3 additional individuals entered the room. They were not attired in hospital uniforms. Rather, they wore impeccably tailored suits, considerably more expensive than the attire Wami had sported on his wedding day. They carried leather briefcases. Good afternoon, Mr. Thorne, the man in the center announced. We represent your legal counsel. Wami and Amani froze. This was undeniably real. It was not a bluff. The lawyer disregarded the couple and addressed Mr. Thorne directly. All requisite documentation is prepared, sir. The power of attorney, the draft divorce petition, and the preliminary report for the constabulary. He then turned to face Wami and Amani. His demeanor was affable, yet his eyes possessed an icy chill. "Good afternoon, Mr. Wami, Mrs. Amani. I represent our client, Mr. Thorne, and the soon-to-be Mrs. Zola." I do not desire a divorce," Wami stammered in a state of panic. "That decision is no longer within your purview, Mr. Wami," the lawyer responded calmly. "You are presently presented with two distinct options. I strongly advise you to attend with utmost diligence." As the lawyer expounded, the hospital personnel moved with alacrity. A wheelchair for Zola arrived, a VVIP bassinet accompanied by a more refined, appropriately soft cashmere blanket, was brought forth by a dedicated nurse. Zola, with the assistance of the nurse, slowly sat upright and, for the inaugural time, cradled her son with a profound sense of relief. "The first option," the lawyer stated, breaking the silence. His voice was measured. "You affix your signatures to these documents. An acknowledgement of having received and disbursed the sum of $144,000, a divorce settlement agreement, the concession of full parental custody to Mrs. Zola, and the transfer of ownership of the Scarlet sedan, alongside a residential property as an initial installment towards the repatriation of those funds." "What? Not our residence?" Imi shrieked. "It is registered in my name." "A residence renovated and fully paid for, with funds that did not belong to you, Mrs. Amani," the lawyer corrected her. "Should you cooperate and execute these documents today, our client may, and I emphasize may, exhibit leniency and refrain from initiating criminal proceedings for embezzlement and money laundering." Wami's gaze darted towards his mother, his face etched with terror. Jail! That single word reverberated in his ears. "And the second option," Kwame whispered, his voice barely audible. "The second option," the lawyer's smile vanished, "is outright refusal. We will commence the civil litigation this very afternoon and, concurrently, lodge the criminal complaint with the police authorities. The transfer receipts, the audio recording of your confession from moments ago," he indicated Mr. Thorne's phone, "and your bank statements constitute irrefutable evidence. We guarantee you will not prevail. You will forfeit everything, and most critically, you will spend a considerable duration incarcerated. Choose wisely." Imani trembled uncontrollably. Her face, previously aflame with indignation, was now as pale as parchment. Her arrogance had completely dissipated, replaced solely by unadulterated fear. Amidst the unfolding chaos, Zola was already seated in the wheelchair, her infant securely held, prepared to depart. Mr. Thorne stood by her side. His assistant was diligently propelling the chair. As they traversed the threshold, Wami made one final desperate maneuver. He wrenched himself free from the guard's grasp and collapsed onto his knees on the floor. "Zola!" he cried with unrestrained anguish. "My darling, please do not leave. I implore you, I made a grave error. I will kiss your feet. Please do not abandon me." Zola gestured for the assistant to pause. Wami's eyes, filled with a flicker of hope, fastened upon her. "Zola!" Zola regarded her husband's countenance, the face she had once cherished, now contorted by theatrical tears. She felt an absolute void, no empathy, no affection, only profound weariness. Slowly, Zola directed her gaze straight ahead. "Proceed," she instructed the assistant softly. The wheelchair resumed its forward motion, leaving behind Wami, still kneeling in the corridor, and Amani slumped onto a chair, staring in stunned disbelief at the formidable stack of legal documents clutched in the lawyer's hands. The elevator doors at the far end of the hallway slid open. Zola entered with her father, not casting a backward glance. Wami's desperate plea was the final sound Zola registered before the elevator doors sealed shut, conveying her towards the dawn of a new existence. The profound silence within the spacious VVIP elevator, imbued with the subtle aroma of expensive cleaning agents, was absolute. Only the gentle hum of the machinery accompanied their ascent. Zola rested her head against the plush cushioning of the wheelchair. For a fleeting moment she closed her eyes, her embrace around the small infant resting in her lap tightening. She could feel the rhythmic, tranquil thrum of her son's tiny heartbeat, a stark counterpoint to the tumultuous storm she had just navigated. Mr. Thorne remained by her side, his protective hand resting lightly on the back of the wheelchair. He spoke not a word, understanding that his daughter required time to process. The elevator doors parted, revealing not a conventional hallway, but a discreet, opulent private lobby situated on the uppermost floor. This VVIP suite bore a striking resemblance to a five-star hotel. Thick carpeting muffled their footsteps. Walls were adorned with polished wood paneling, and the lighting exuded a warm, inviting ambiance. Another head nurse stood in attendance. "Welcome, Mrs. Zola," she greeted warmly. "Mr. Thorne, the suite is prepared." They were courteously escorted to their assigned quarters. Zola inhaled deeply, momentarily breathless. The space was palatial. The opulent suite featured a distinct living space, a plush velvet couch, and a cutting-edge motorized patient bed. Yet it was the sweeping, floor-to-ceiling expanse of glass that truly captivated her, presenting an unbroken panorama of the cityscape. The evening sky was already beginning its transformation, tinged with hues of orange. Tucked away in a corner rested a magnificent solid wood bassinet, meticulously outfitted with superior infant necessities, all still in their original packaging, a stark contrast to the plastic Moses basket and the second-hand blanket. "Please rest, madam. I will assist you with your baby," the nurse offered with a gentle tone. Zola paused, her grip on her son reluctant. Mr. Thorne, sensing her hesitation, spoke. "Allow me to hold him." With deliberate care, he accepted his first grandchild from Zola's embrace. The man, typically perceived as unfeeling, appeared somewhat awkward, but his gaze overflowed with profound affection. "Welcome, little champion. You are a cherished addition to our family," he murmured to the infant. It was at this precise moment, observing her father cradling her son within the sanctuary of that lavish chamber, that the overwhelming pressure Zola had suppressed for hours, or perhaps years, finally broke free. Her shoulders began to tremble. A choked sob escaped, followed by another. She covered her face with her hands, her distress escalating into an unrestrained flood of tears. She wept not from the pain or fury emanating from elsewhere, but from a profound sense of release. These were tears that cleansed every hurt, every deception, every indignity she had endured over the preceding 3 years. She wept for her own naivety, for the lost time, and for the liberating realization that she was finally free. Mr. Thorne swiftly handed the baby back to the nurse and moved to Zola's wheelchair, kneeling beside her. He drew his daughter into a tight embrace. "Cry, my dear. Release it all. It is over now. Everything is concluded." "Father, I am so sorry," Zola whispered, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "I was so foolish." "Shh," Mr. Thorne interrupted gently. "You were not foolish. You are simply too kind, and others took advantage of that kindness. From this moment forward, no one will ever cause you harm again. I give you my word." Meanwhile, in the shared quarters on a lower floor, the atmosphere was dramatically different. Wami's anguished cries in the corridor did nothing to deter the legal representatives. They re-entered the room where Imani remained seated, rigid. Amani stumbled in after them, her gait unsteady, her eyes vacant. "Excellent," the lead counsel announced, placing a stack of documents and a pen before Imani. "The time for negotiation has passed. It is now a matter of decision, incarceration or your signature. Amani's gaze fell upon the papers. The initial page bore the stark heading, Acknowledgement of Debt and Asset Transfer. Her eyes widened as she registered the sum of $144,000. This is highway robbery, she seethed. This is justice, Mrs. Amani. The lawyer responded with icy politeness. Consider it a generous concession. Should this proceed to trial, the sum could easily triple, factoring in bank interest and damages for emotional distress, not to mention our substantial fees, which would also fall to your responsibility, alongside the distinct possibility of a custodial sentence. Imani's hands began to shake. She looked at Amani. Look at this. We'll be destitute. He offered no reply, his gaze fixed vacantly on the wall. His world had already crumbled. His automobile, his supposed standing within the company. He was certain Mr. Thorne would seize those as well. And now their home. Mother, he pleaded softly, clinging to the last vestiges of his sanity. Sign. What? You intend to capitulate so readily? That house belonged to your mother. It's a residence we won't be able to occupy if we're imprisoned, Mother. Wami's voice rose, his temper finally igniting. Did you not hear the word jail? I have no desire to go to prison, and all of this is because of your avarice. My fault? Amani scoffed, rising to her feet. Do not make me laugh. You revelled in it too. You drove that car. You adored being recognized as a successful man, and now you lay the blame at my feet, you ungrateful child. Enough. The lawyer's voice cut through their heated exchange. We are not compensated to witness familial discord. You will either sign, or I will summon the authorities immediately. He withdrew his mobile device. Amani's eyes flickered from the phone to the formidable pile of documents. With a trembling hand, she reached for the pen. Where? She demanded, her voice hoarse. The lawyer guided her, indicating the precise locations for her signature on each of the adhesive tabs. Amani signed with such ferocity that the paper nearly tore. Upon completion, she flung the pen onto the table. Mr. Kwame, your turn, the lawyer instructed. Kwame signed with the unthinking compliance of an automaton, his signature barely legible. Excellent, the lawyer declared, gathering the papers. One final matter. He extended his hand. The keys to the automobile and the residence. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. Our team will be here tomorrow afternoon to take possession. Reluctantly, he fumbled in his pockets, producing the keychain for the crimson vehicle and the keys to the house, once his source of pride. Once the legal representatives had departed, Kwame and Imani were left alone in the room. Amani, who had displayed such fortitude moments before, suddenly faltered. Her legs gave way and she collapsed to the floor, her body racked with sobs. It is all over, our funds, our home. Oh, Wami, where will we reside? Wami offered no response. He sank onto a chair, his gaze vacant as it swept over the designer shopping bags they had recently acquired. They lay scattered on the floor now, an ironic and pathetic testament to their former status. In the hospital's exclusive VVIP suite, Zola had just completed her first peaceful feeding of her son. Her aging mobile phone, its screen bearing a minor crack, rested on the bedside table. Abruptly, it vibrated. The name Mom appeared on the display. An incoming call. The vibration ceased, replaced by a cascade of text message alerts. 1:20 p.m. Sweetheart, please answer. I made a terrible mistake. Mum fainted. Zola, please, I have nothing left. You are being far too cruel. We can rebuild, my darling. I promise. Zola's companion, Amara, who had just arrived following a call from Mr. Thorne, observed the string of messages. Good heavens, Zola! The man possesses no shame, Amara exclaimed indignantly. She looked at her friend. Are you going to respond to him? Zola's gaze returned to the phone screen. A fleeting image of her father's pleading visage flashed in her mind, only to be quickly supplanted by the memory of Amani's scornful expression, of herself toiling until 3 a.m, of that threadbare blanket. With a steady hand, Zola lifted the phone. Amara anticipated a reply, but Zola pressed and held the power button, selecting the option to power off. The screen went black. There is no longer an us, Zola whispered to herself. She met Amara's gaze and for the first time in a considerable period offered a genuine smile. Now it is simply my son and me. The tranquility of the VVIP suite was a luxury Zola had nearly forgotten. Over the subsequent 2 days, she underwent a recovery that was not only physical, but also deeply emotional, enveloped by attentive nurses, state-of-the-art facilities, and, most importantly, a profound sense of security. Mr. Thorne remained a constant presence, temporarily relocating his office to the living area, overseeing his multi-million-dollar enterprises while vigilantly watching over his first grandson. Her friend Amara served as her emotional bulwark, visiting daily, bringing her favoured culinary delights, despite the hospital's already exceptional offerings, and above all, eliciting laughter. "So," Amara remarked on the 3rd day, peeling an apple, "what will you name this handsome young man? Don't tell me, with the surname Thorne, you intend to call him Mr. President from infancy." Zola chuckled, a genuine, unrestrained laugh she hadn't experienced in ages. Her gaze fell upon her son, sleeping peacefully in his exquisite cradle. "His name is Elias," she whispered. "Elias Thorne." "Elias," Amara repeated. A fresh start. It suits you, Zola. This is truly the dawn of your new existence." "And Elias," Zola continued, "because he represents the clearest manifestation of divine grace in my life. He saved me." While Zola discovered renewed optimism in one part of the city, grim clouds gathered over the residence that had served as her deceptive stage for 3 years. Wami and Amani were enduring the longest 24 hours of their lives. After the legal team's departure, the house felt hollow. Amani's explosive fury had dissolved into heart-wrenching, hysterical sobs. "My house, your father's inheritance, they have taken it from us, Wami. They have seized it," she cried, beating her chest. "It was already mortgaged, Mother. We paid it off with Zola's funds," Wami replied, his voice hoarse. He no longer cared. He merely wanted it all to cease. His mind was a blank. He had been dismissed from his position. A single text message from Mr. Thorne to the Human Resources Department of his former company had sufficed. Within minutes, his employment contract was terminated without severance, and a notation of gross ethical misconduct was added to his record. "We must relocate, Mother, now." "Relocate where?" Amani shrieked. "Under a bridge? You have no money, I have none either. My credit cards are all frozen." It must have been that old man. Wami neglected to inform his mother that he still possessed a small cache of illicit funds he had managed to squirrel away from the office, money he had kept hidden even from her. It was his sole glimmer of hope. They began packing in a grim and somber atmosphere. Amani wasn't merely packing. She was diligently stuffing the gold jewelry she had purchased with Zola's money into her undergarments and wrapping her few genuine designer handbags in old cloth sacks, hoping the enforcement team wouldn't notice. Wami, for his part, placed his clothing into a single sizable suitcase. He cast one last glance at the crimson sedan in the garage. Its gleaming surface seemed to mock his misfortune. The following day, precisely at noon, the doorbell rang. It was not the lawyer. It was far worse. 3 burly men accompanied by a member of the legal team and a locksmith. "Your time has expired, Mr. Quime, Mrs. Amani," one of the legal team members announced in an expressionless tone. Amani attempted one final act of defiance, rushing to the door and shouting at the neighbors. Help! Help! They are evicting us unjustly. Wealthy individuals seek to steal our home. Help! Several curious neighbors emerged, but the legal team was fully prepared. He produced a copy of the court order and the document Amani had signed the previous day. This lady voluntarily signed over her assets as compensation in a case of embezzlement. Everything is legal. Kindly refrain from interfering in legal proceedings. The neighbors' expressions, initially sympathetic, shifted to wary. Embezzlement. That word resonated. They immediately began to whisper amongst themselves. Realizing her resistance was futile, Amani deflated. Please gather your belongings and depart. We are scheduled to change the locks on this residence, the employee stated. Under the scrutiny of dozens of gossiping neighbors, he dragged his suitcase outside. Amani followed, carrying a bulky cloth bag, her face partially concealed by the edge of a scarf to hide her shame. Just a moment, Wami called out. The legal team employee paused. The red sedan. We could utilize it to transport the suitcases. We will return it later. The legal team member regarded him as if he were insignificant dust. Mr. Wami, that vehicle has not been yours since yesterday. It is a seized asset. Kindly depart. He gestured towards the main thoroughfare. Wami bowed his head, walked to the end of the street, and hailed an aged taxi. He placed the suitcase inside and assisted his mother, who was still weeping, into the vehicle. Where are we going, Wami? Imani sobbed from within the taxi. To a boarding house near the railway tracks, Wami replied quietly. It is the only accommodation I can afford with what remains of our funds. As the taxi pulled away, the locksmith commenced his work. The grinding sound of the drill breaching the old lock was a poignant dirge. Click. The door closed. The new lock was installed. The chapter of their affluent existence had officially concluded. Almost concurrently, in the VVIP lobby of the hospital, Amara received a message on her mobile device. She showed it to Zola, who was elegantly attired in a simple yet sophisticated dress gifted by her father. The message was concise. Asset 1, housing, and Asset 2, automobile, secured. Clients Kwame and Amani have cooperated. Zola read the message. There was no triumphant smile or peal of satisfaction, only a long, deep exhalation. She closed her eyes for a moment. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, a tear that washed away the final vestiges of the past. It is over, Zola, Amara whispered, taking her hand. Zola nodded. Yes, it is over. Mr. Thorne emerged from the administrative office, tucking his platinum credit card back into his pocket. Everything is finalized. Let us take our daughter home. A nurse approached, bearing Elias, swaddled in a soft cashmere blanket. Zola rose from the wheelchair. She was still somewhat sore, but she adamantly refused to be assisted. She walked independently, holding Elias securely, and exited the hospital, passing through the gleaming lobby doors. Outside, a luxurious black sedan with a private chauffeur awaited them. She entered the vehicle, leaving behind the sterile scent of disinfectant and a painful history. She did not look back. The journey to their new residence felt surreal to Zola. The opulent car glided silently through the city's thoroughfares. Outside, there was the clamor of traffic and the omnipresent dust, but within, she and Elias were enveloped in cool, hushed luxury. She sat in the rear seat with Amara, while Mr. Thorne, occupying the front passenger seat, was engaged in business calls. It was the first time she had witnessed the outside world after a week immersed in personal drama. Yet, she did not feel as though she was returning home. She was uncertain which home she was meant to return to. Wami's residence was no longer hers, and where was her father taking her? The car did not proceed toward her father's lavish suburban enclave, a place she had known since childhood. Instead, it turned toward the financial district, stopping before the entrance of an imposing skyscraper. "Father, where are we going?" Zola inquired, a sense of unease growing. "Home," Mr. Thorne responded curtly, a faint smile gracing his lips. They ascended in a private elevator directly to the uppermost level, the 50th floor. As the elevator doors parted, they were greeted not by an office lobby, but by the breathtaking expanse of a penthouse apartment's living room. The walls were almost entirely glass, offering an uninterrupted 360-degree vista of the city. The flooring was crafted from imported marble. The furnishings were minimalist, yet exuded an air of immense cost. "My goodness, Father, where are we?" Zola stammered, astounded. "In your residence, in your home," Mr. Thorne stated, gently taking Elias from Zola's arms. "My assistant has been preparing it since yesterday. Welcome home, my daughter." A middle-aged woman in a uniform greeted them. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Zola. I am Mrs. Bethel. I will be Elias's nanny, and this is Mrs. Jones, your personal postpartum nurse." Zola felt an even greater sense of bewilderment. Nanny? Personal nurse? Mr. Thorne led her on a comprehensive tour of the dwelling. There were 3 bedrooms. The master suite was more expansive than the entire rental apartment she had previously occupied. There was a guest room, and another had been transformed into the most luxurious nursery she had ever encountered. The crib was fashioned from solid wood. A closet overflowed with imported educational toys and designer baby garments, complemented by an air conditioning system with precise temperature regulation. Amara let out a soft whistle. "Zola, this is simply unbelievable. It's a palace." That evening, after Amara's departure and with Elias slumbering peacefully in his lavish cradle, Zola found herself unable to sleep. She stood before the immense window, gazing out at the flickering urban lights. She ought to be content. She was free, she was wealthy, she was secure. Yet her heart felt unsettled. She felt insignificant, as though she had merely transitioned from one confinement to another, from the restrictive confines of Wami and Amani's dwelling to now her father's gilded cage. She had not earned this, she was simply his daughter. The following morning, following a breakfast prepared by her father's private chef, Zola ventured into her father's study within the penthouse. "Father," she called out softly. Mr. Thorne looked up from a stack of documents. "Yes, my dear, is something amiss? Do you not care for the sustenance?" "No, Father." Zola took a deep, steadying breath. Thank you for everything, for Elias and for this place. I find myself at a loss for words." "You need not utter a word," Mr. Thorne replied gently. "All of this is rightfully yours and long overdue." "But I cannot live like this, Father," Zola stated firmly. Mr. Thorne's brow furrowed. "What do you mean you cannot live like this? Like this? Being attended to, cared for, being a burden to you once more? I am no longer a child, Father. I am a mother." Zola met her father's gaze directly. "I do not wish to be a dependent." Mr. Thorne's expression, previously gentle, became stern. "Dependent? What precisely do you imply? Previously, I was a dependent in Wami and Amani's household, despite my labor, and now I feel like a dependent here. I do not desire to subsist on your magnanimity," Zola declared with conviction. "I wish to stand independently." Mr. Thorne remained silent, his gaze scrutinizing his daughter's eyes for any sign of hesitation. However, what he perceived was the very same spark he possessed, the fiery spirit of a combatant. Slowly a smile began to spread across Mr. Thorne's lips, a smile of genuine pride. "And what is your intended course of action?" Zola's heart pounded. This was the pivotal moment. "I wish to establish my own enterprise." "What manner of enterprise?" she elaborated. "I am a graphic designer, but I am also a mother." Zola began to explain. Father, observe all these infant accoutrements you procured for me. They are luxurious, undoubtedly of superior quality, but they must represent a substantial investment. Not all mothers can afford such items. I aspire to create my own brand of premium infant products, distinguished by exquisite design yet accessible in price. She paused, then continued, and apparel, modest attire for mothers. I comprehend the feeling of spending an entire day in worn-out clothing. I recognize the difficulty in locating nursing wear that is both comfortable, elegant, and not immodest. I aim to design a line of modest, contemporary fashion for mothers like myself, garments that impart a sense of beauty and dignity even amidst the demands of childcare. Mr. Thorne listened with rapt attention, his expression unreadable. I possess the designs, Zola added, a nervous tremor in her voice. She retrieved the tablet her father had provided and opened her design portfolio. May I proceed? I am confident in my abilities. I simply require the initial capital. As Zola concluded, Mr. Thorne leaned back in his chair. Agreed, it is a sound proposition. The market for modest fashion and infant essentials is perpetually robust. Are you serious, Father? Zola inquired, her voice filled with hope. Absolutely, Mr. Thorne affirmed. I will provide the capital, however, he continued, not as a gift. I shall extend it to you in the form of a business loan. Prepare a comprehensive business plan. Detail the production expenses, marketing strategies, and projected profits. Present it to me, and if its viability is established, I shall transfer the funds. Zola's face, already radiant, now glowed even more brightly. This was precisely what she desired. Not a handout, not pity, but a challenge, an expression of trust. I will prepare the business plan immediately, Father. Right now. Excellent. Engage Amara. Appoint her as your manager. She is an astute and loyal individual. I will grant you access to my company's branding division for consultation. Mr. Thorne rose from his seat. That is my daughter. Almost simultaneously, at a humble boarding house near the railway tracks, Wami awoke. The pervasive odor of sewage and the thunderous rumble of a passing train assaulted his senses. Amani snored softly on a thin mat beside him. The only illumination came from a flickering, antiquated fan spinning overhead. Wami reached for his mobile device. No new messages or calls. He opened his banking application. Remaining balance, $300, sufficient to cover this month's boarding house rent and purchase meager sustenance. An email notification from his former employer's human resources department appeared. A letter of wrongful termination. He was now officially unemployed, his professional record tainted. Wami tossed the phone onto the worn mattress. He stared blankly at the spiderweb-adorned ceiling. He had nothing left. Back in the penthouse, Zola was engaged in a video conference with Amara. Amara, would you consider becoming the chief executive officer of our company? Zola exclaimed with palpable excitement. What? CEO of what company? Zola, you just gave birth. Amara exclaimed with laughter from the other end of the connection. Of our company. I am quite serious. Father will provide us with the capital. We shall establish our own brand, Thorne Apparel. Amara fell silent for a moment, then broke into a wide grin. Ready for the position, Director? Zola laughed, ended the call, and turned her gaze to Elias, who was peacefully sleeping in his luxurious crib. We are embarking on a new venture, my son, she whispered. She was no longer the fragile Zola. She was Zola Thorne, a mother and a budding entrepreneur. 6 months elapsed. For Zola, these were 6 months enveloped in a haze of diapers, business meetings, meticulously crafted business plans, sleepless nights with Elias, and even more sleepless nights dedicated to her design work. For Wami and Amani, these were 6 months of a slow, inexorable descent into a personal hell. The cramped lodging, secured with funds from illicit dealings, was a mere 10 by 13-foot enclosure adjacent to the railway lines. It lacked any climate control. A modest aperture, when unsealed, allowed the offensive odour of a blocked sewage system to permeate the space. The flimsy partitions offered no privacy. Every whispered conversation, every outburst of anger, every despondent sigh from neighbouring occupants was readily audible. Every 30 minutes, irrespective of the hour, a train would rumble past, causing the entire structure to vibrate. Imani, a woman who had once commanded attention at social functions, was now a mere spectre of her former self. Her gold adornments, concealed within her undergarments, were progressively bartered for sustenance. Accustomed to being catered to, she was now obliged to utilize a communal restroom located at the conclusion of the corridor and perform her washing by hand. On that particular day, she was seated before her room's entrance, beside the malodorous drain, diligently scrubbing her husband's sweat-soaked attire in a basin with a meagre quantity of cheap detergent. Her hands, once smooth and delicate, had become calloused and raw. The soapy water caused a stinging sensation, and the pervasive stench induced nausea. A neighbour, the proprietor of the salad stand, paused her activity. "Are you doing your laundry, Mrs. Imani? That's rather unexpected. You always utilized the dry cleaners." Imani's countenance flushed. "Merely for a bit of exercise," she fabricated. The neighbour chuckled. "Exercise? Well, you certainly appear quite miserable. Ah, you must use a brush for your husband's work clothes, mustn't you? Like this." She extended an old scrub brush towards Imani. Imani experienced a profound sense of degradation. Tears trickled into the murky water. She loathed this existence. She despised the foul smell. She detested the neighbour. She detested Kwame. And above all else, she harboured animosity towards Zola and her father. At a wholesale marketplace, Kwame was engaged in the laborious task of hefting sacks of potatoes. The man who had once occupied an office cubicle, impeccably dressed, now toiled as a warehouse loader, clad in a tattered t-shirt. His physique, formerly well kept, was now gaunt and sunburnt. Having been blacklisted by every corporate entity, this was the sole employment he could secure. His compensation was disbursed on a daily basis. $2 for each sack he transported from the delivery vehicle to the vendor's stall. His labour commenced with the dawn. His back ached persistently. His hands were riddled with blisters. "Hey, Kwame, pick up the pace. It's hard to fathom that with your considerable frame, you take so long to move a single sack," the foreman bellowed at him. Kwame could only offer a nod and increase his efforts. By late afternoon, he collected his earnings. $75, presented in crumpled bills that carried the scent of fish, sufficient to procure rice and instant noodles. In prior times, $75 would have barely covered 3 hours of parking at a shopping mall. He began the trek home on foot to conserve bus fare. He found his mother seated in the dimness. Their electricity had been disconnected, and only a single energy-efficient bulb was functional. "How much did you manage to bring back?" Imani inquired, her voice raspy. Kwame deposited the bills onto the floor mat. $75. Imani's eyes narrowed with contempt. "Only that? What have you been occupied with all day? That's hardly enough for rice." "Yes, it is, mother. If we are frugal, and if you would cease requesting fabric softener with a floral scent," he retorted, his patience frayed. "Do you perceive the acquisition of funds to be effortless? My back is fractured and my hands are ruined. And what do you contribute at home? You merely sit and lament." "I performed the laundry," Imani asserted, "and I endured the indignity from our neighbours. Mrs. Imani, humiliated by a salad vendor, all because of you." "Because of me?" Kwame emitted a bitter, incredulous laugh. Whose culpability is it, mother? Who exhibited avarice? Who declared, "This is your recompense, my son"? Who labelled Zola as a foolish simpleton? Imani fell silent. You, Kwame exclaimed, pointing a finger at her. Had you not been so covetous? Had we presented Zola a mere $500 from the $7,500, she would have been content, and we would still have possessed $7,000 monthly. We could still be enjoying a comfortable existence, but you desired it all. Greed, that is your affliction, not Zola's. A resounding slap echoed through the room. Imani had struck him with the full force of her being. Ungrateful son, she gasped, you attribute blame to your own mother. It is entirely because you are a mama's boy. You lacked the fortitude to control your spouse. Had you been more assertive with her from the outset, Zola would never have dared. He touched his burning cheek. Something within him fractured. Mama's boy, he repeated, you rendered me this way. I did not wish to be incarcerated. And now I am bereft of everything. They raised their voices. They hurled insults at one another. They cast blame upon each other. Their vocalizations mingled with the thunderous roar of the train. The affection between mother and son had vanished, replaced by two desperate individuals, ensnared by the consequences they themselves had orchestrated. Exhausted from their conflict, they fell into silence. Their stomachs rumbled. Kwame prepared 2 packets of instant noodles in an antiquated pot. No eggs, no vegetables, simply noodles and the accompanying flavor packet. They consumed their meal in silence. Abruptly, their attention gravitated towards the room's sole source of entertainment. A vintage 14-inch cathode ray tube television acquired for $20. The local news was broadcasting a segment featuring young entrepreneurs. And our next inspiring figure is Miss Zola Thorne, the announcer declared. Kwame and Imani froze, their spoons suspended mid-air. Zola's countenance materialized on the screen. She presented a transformed appearance. While still possessing her innate beauty, she now exuded a palpable aura of accomplishment. She was attired in a chic blouse complemented by a matching dusty rose scarf. She stood before a grand, opulent establishment bearing a prominent sign that proclaimed, Thorne Apparel. Yes, thank you. Zola's voice, clear and assured, emanated from the television. Thorne Apparel was conceived from my aspiration to provide comfortable, elegant, and modest attire for young mothers. The camera then displayed the interior of the boutique, thronged with affluent patrons avidly seeking the garments and premium infant accessories. And to commemorate the grand opening of our inaugural store, Zola continued, her gaze fixed on the camera with a smile, we shall be donating 10% of this month's profits to an orphanage. Crash. Imani had hurled her bowl of noodles at the antique television. The screen flickered erratically before succumbing to darkness. Shards of ceramic and the broth from the noodles spattered across the floor. Shameless! Imani shrieked, her voice once again overpowering the din of the train. She is ostentatiously displaying her affluence while we suffer. That sorceress. Kwame remained motionless. He gazed blankly at the now darkened television screen. In its reflection he perceived his own visage, gaunt, emaciated, utterly vanquished. A year had elapsed since that fateful day at the hospital. For those who cultivate aspirations, time eludes immediate perception. The penthouse, once an unfamiliar environment, had transformed into a cherished abode for Zola and Elias. Under the tutelage of Mr. Thorne, a business mentor, characterized by his stern yet equitable approach, Thorne Apparel experienced an astonishing surge in growth. Zola's business strategy was nothing short of ingenious. She was not merely retailing clothing, she was disseminating a narrative, fostering a sense of community. She meticulously cultivated a brand identity that resonated with young mothers. The quality of the merchandise was exceptional, yet the pricing remained accessible to the middle-income demographic. The outcome was nothing short of spectacular. Within a single year, Thorn Apparel had established branches in 5 upscale shopping centres and inaugurated a manufacturing facility that provided employment for dozens of local seamstresses. Today marked a significant occasion: Elias's inaugural birthday and Thorn Apparel's first anniversary. However, the festivities were not being held in a luxurious hotel. True to her pledge, Zola chose a different venue, a modest yet immaculate community orphanage situated on the city's periphery. The orphanage's courtyard was adorned with balloons. Numerous orphaned children sat in orderly rows, their eyes sparkling at the sight of gift-laden boxes and an immense birthday cake. Elias, already capable of crawling, giggled joyfully in the embrace of his grandfather, Mr. Thorne. Zola ascended a small platform, dressed in a simple yet elegant white gown from her most recent collection. Her countenance was serene and radiant. "Greetings, everyone," she announced in a gentle tone. "Today I stand before you not as the Chief Executive Officer of Thorn Apparel, but as Zola, a mother and a daughter." She directed a smile towards her father. "1 year ago, my son Elias entered this world, and his arrival signified a new dawn in my existence. He imparted to me the very essence of resilience. I wish for Elias to comprehend that true contentment is not derived from material possessions, but from the generosity of our spirit." Consequently, in profound gratitude for his first birthday and for the inaugural year of Thorn Apparel, my father and I have resolved to fund the comprehensive refurbishment of this orphanage and establish a foundation dedicated to ensuring the educational expenses of all these children until they successfully complete their secondary education. A resounding ovation erupted. The orphanage director, a woman of faith, wept with profound emotion. The children erupted in joyful cheers. Mr. Thorne, with Elias cradled in his arms, offered the most enthusiastic applause. He regarded his daughter through tear-filled eyes. She had not only achieved professional success, but had also evolved into a person of remarkable character. As Zola descended from the platform and embraced Elias, the phone Amara held vibrated. Amara glanced at it and approached Zola. Zola," she whispered amidst the lively commotion. "There is significant news." Zola turned. "What news, Amara?" Amara hesitated for a moment. "News of recompense," she stated. Zola's brow furrowed. Amara presented her with the phone's screen. 2 messages were displayed. The first emanated from her father's legal counsel. "An apprehension has been made at a modest courier company. N has been detained for the misappropriation of $2,000 in company assets. He is currently in police custody." $2,000? Zola offered a wry smile. Previously, it had been hundreds of thousands. Now he had faltered over 2,000. Lacking any skills beyond fraudulent activities, Kwame had attempted to perpetrate his transgression on a reduced, albeit clumsier scale, and had been apprehended. Amara then slid the screen to the second message, received mere minutes earlier from the concierge of their former residence. "Miss Amara, there has been an incident within the community. An elderly woman was apprehended pilfering garments from a clothesline in Block C. Upon discovery, she commenced an hysterical outburst. It was Mrs. Zola's former mother-in-law, Mrs. Imani. She was disheveled and unrecognizable. The police have taken her into custody." The queen of social gatherings, who had once boasted of designer handbags, was now reduced to stealing clothes from a clothesline. Retribution had manifested in the most ironic fashion imaginable. With Kwame's arrest, Imani had forfeited her sole, albeit meager, source of income. Hunger had superseded her pride. Zola gazed at the phone screen for an extended duration. "Are you all right, Zola?" Amara inquired. Zola inhaled deeply. She experienced no surge of triumph, nor any inclination towards celebration. What she felt was a profound sense of relief, a liberation from an oppressive burden she had unknowingly carried for an immeasurable time. The chapter had finally been irrevocably concluded by destiny. She locked the screen and returned the phone to Amara. "I am well," she stated. "Indeed, I feel liberated." She turned, her gaze now devoid of any lingering shadows of the past. Before her, Elias giggled, extending his tiny hands towards the birthday cake. Her father smiled at her. "Come now, daughter. It is time to extinguish the candles," Mr. Thorne urged. Zola nodded, approached her son, gathered him into her arms, and bestowed a kiss upon his cherubic cheek. She stood beside her father, enveloped by the joyous laughter of the orphanage children. "Happy birthday, my darling," she whispered to Elias. Zola closed her eyes momentarily and offered a silent prayer of gratitude. Then she opened them, smiled, and, with Elias by her side, blew out the single candle adorning the cake. The flame was extinguished, leaving only the illumination, the radiant light of her newly dawning day.